Coming up next, we talk to Mike Huckabee, the man that President-elect Donald Trump has chosen to become the U.S. ambassador to Israel. And we'll talk to Jaron Smith, a man who previously served in the past Trump administration. America's Hope starts now.
This is America's Hope from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Kelly Wright.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kelly Wright. Welcome to a brand new edition of America's Hope. We're glad that you could stop by and listen wherever you are. We do sincerely hope that you're safe and well, taking care of yourself and your family because you matter. Well, look, there's no doubt about it. Politics matters as well. And we're looking at the way forward tonight in terms of what President-elect Donald Trump and his new administration will do. We're going to talk tonight to Jaron Smith. He stops by to weigh in on what it was like to have served for the president in his previous administration. And then we'll talk to Mike Huckabee, a man that many of you know. He ran for president of the United States. He's the former governor of Arkansas. He's a talented musician and a show host of his own program on TBN called The Mike Huckabee Show. Tonight, he talks about the fact that he has been appointed, or at least nominated, to become the new U.S. ambassador to Israel for the Trump administration. Let's get started. Hi, everybody. I'm Kelly Wright, and welcome to another edition of America's Hope. And I'm joined now by someone who I've been following his career for a while. He's done quite a bit of notable work in political circles, and I should say in helping to uplift people throughout the country and the world. His name is Jaron Smith. He is a partner with CGCN based in Washington, D.C. And Jaron, welcome to America's Hope. It's been a while since we've talked, and a lot has transpired, as you know, with this historical election that so many people watched and participated in. Let me start by asking you, were you surprised at all by the outcome of the election?
I wasn't surprised that President Trump won. What I was surprised was the margins to which he won. I was a bit worried based off of the media coverage that was transpiring all across the country. But after visiting communities throughout the last couple of years, I saw something different. And what I saw from many underserved communities was a huge support for President Trump's agenda. People missed him being in office. And that led me to believe that he would win another term. But I really underestimated the power of the American people because I was worried about their voices and views being drowned out by the terrible media coverage and polls that really wasn't speaking to everyday people. And just, the president winning a popular vote was just something I didn't think people were arguing. That's not something Republicans can really fight for or win. But him winning a popular vote speaks volumes to how people saw his administration and his ability to get things done.
Based on what you just stated, winning the popular vote, and of course, having for himself a clear mandate of what he can do with his agenda, the way forward, how do you see a new Trump administration as he moves in to prepare for carrying out his agenda for America?
President Trump has been consistent in sticking by his campaign promises. And so I think that there's going to be a huge focus on an all-above approach towards energy to deal with inflation. There's going to be a huge focus on fixing our immigration issue with, stopping the influx at the border and maybe getting rid of some of the more violent immigrants who have migrants who have come here and committed crimes and are terrorizing certain cities. And then I think he'll work on our supply chain management and help grow our economy in record ways like he did before. And I think those are campaign promises that he had front and center. And I'm interested to see how he's going to kind of create this new infrastructure of opportunity that's going to touch this new coalition of white, Black, and Latino voters who turned out in record numbers to support President Trump.
Absolutely. That was a surprise to many people, how he turned out those kinds of voters, even younger voters, Generation Z. As long as you've touched on the innovation aspects, you worked with the former president, now president-elect, in that vein for American innovation. You were a senior advisor to the Trump administration uh, when he served as President 45. Now he's serving as President 47 come January 20th. Do you see anything down the road where he'll be able to capitalize on that, which you just discussed?
Certainly, I think that what I've learned with working in the Trump orbit is he's very result and outcome oriented, and that allows for him to be innovative and nuanced towards getting those results. You've already seen him speak to tariffs and do things even before becoming president that has made Canada or Mexico start to kind of rethink how they're going to deal with the border and also deal with doing trade with the United States. And so I think that nuanced way of thinking, the new type of diplomacy is going to work well with him, not only internationally but domestic, because he's willing to kind of go outside the box, do things that aren't normally done in order to get the results that's going to produce the right outcomes. And that's the type of leadership we need to navigate the challenges of the 21st century.
Jaron, I want to talk about you. How did you get involved in politics? Because you actually got involved in such a way that you moved up to the, I guess, the top of the game, as people would say in Washington when it comes to politics. You actually worked for the President of the United States, with the President of the United States, advising him as well as his administration on how to create uh, that really remarkable trend that he had for 4 years in helping American innovation, except for the fact that COVID stepped in and derailed a lot of that. I recall talking to him there at the White House during an interview, and he stated that things were going well until COVID came along.
Yeah, I remember that interview. I want to give God all the glory in the world. Like I had opportunities very early on that I didn't expect to work on Capitol Hill. Growing up in a blue collar family, I was raised up a Democrat, but I got an early opportunity to kind of learn more about the Republican Party and switch parties when I was 19 years old. And that led me to working for members like J.C. Watts and then later working for Mike Pence and Jim Jordan, Steve Scalise, and then also being a tax and banking advisor to Senator Tim Scott. And it's all of that experience that led me to getting recruited in the White House. And from the path that God put me on, the reason I was successful in the White House is the years of relationship building that I had done prior to the White House. It allowed for me to kind of do things around opportunity zones and HBCUs and criminal justice because I had built trust with a lot of different partners. And that trust also bled into me being able to work with Democrats on Capitol Hill. But that all wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for President Trump's ability to lead, his ability to kind of think outside the box, his ability to have the courage to move the party in different directions. And I'm very thankful for that. But I also give all the glory to God as well for putting me in position.
We're coming back with more of my conversation in just a moment on America's Hope. Welcome back to America's Hope. I'm talking to Jaron Smith. When it comes to faith, it is the most important subject matter for any human being. Yet, as you know, Jaron, in the media, it is the most underreported value that we don't report enough about.
Sure.
Faith and politics. How do you see the two merging, and what are the benefits thereof?
Well, I know for me, I had to constantly remind myself of why I'm here, and that's to serve in order to kind of get my mind into that frame of thinking. I prayed every morning when I went to the White House, and I read from a hymnal or kind of a devotional book called Jesus is Calling. That's how I started my day, and I prayed over the White House. And I let God kind of work His magic through me, and I just try to keep myself humble throughout the process. But I think the ethics involved in spirituality helps you kind of navigate different personalities and not fight battles a traditional way, but kind of leave some of the battle fighting up to God, and that allows for a person to hold their integrity and kind of move in truth. And I did a lot of that within the White House.
But
Sure.
you had to develop something had to happen within you as a child growing up.
Sure. I mean, it's a longer story, and I actually wrote a book about it that not only talks about my life story a little bit, but also on the policy narrative that we were able to work on with President Trump. That book is called "Underserved: Harnessing Lincoln's Vision for Reconstruction for Today's Forgotten Communities." I come from a forgotten community in Cleveland, Ohio, and grew up around a lot of young men who didn't have fathers. I was one who was blessed to be raised by his father, and that ended up being a huge difference for me. But that didn't protect me from making mistakes and doing things that could have been my downfall. But what made me resilient was my faith in God, knowing that God had a purpose for me. And so when I made those mistakes, I picked myself up and started to rebuild my life in a way to I reached this point when in my deepest disparity that I decided that, like, if I was going to move forward in life, I was going to leave it in God's hands, and I would serve any way God would want me to serve. And I left it open to figure out what that would look like, and it led me back into politics. Because originally, I had left politics after going to Howard University and being a Black Republican. You take a lot of arrow for ideological views, especially in the Black community. And by the time I graduated from college and spent a year on the Hill, I was like, I don't think I want to do that anymore. But God had a call on me to do something bigger than myself, and so I went back into politics almost 4 years later, out of an obligation to just be able to serve and kind of do what I think God was calling me to do. And that landed me to, working for Pence and later working for Jordan and Scott, and then ultimately working for President Trump, which is why I always say to God be the glory.
So you're on the outside right now, working with CGCN. What is your role there as partner, and how are you helping people achieve their goals of building a better relationship with the president, the current president, as well as the future president, and just government in general?
Sure. So I have a social impact practice where I focus on things like building wealth through home ownership with an organization called American Property Owners Alliance, and helping develop better mental health infrastructure with an organization named Care Solace. And I'll also do a lot of work with building coalitions around access to capital and entrepreneurship. Certainly talks about what Opportunity Zones 2.0 would look like if we're able to kind of learn the lessons and also reauthorize that legislation. And then I'm also looking at workforce and how do we modernize our education system. And so, as a consultant, I spend a lot of time kind of working with philanthropic organizations, trade associations, as well as corporates, to kind of think through these issues and figuring out how we can create those private-public partnerships that will harness a new infrastructure opportunity that can lift up all ships in America.
Going forward, how does the president-elect and his administration help heal the divisive wounds that have kept us divided?
I think success, and that's always been his North Star with bringing people together. That no matter where you're from, you can chart out a path for yourself and become successful, or figure out a way that we can work together to create success. It's kind of the North Star. We did that around criminal justice reform. We did that around trade as well.
So let me do a lightning round with you real quick.
Okay.
The lightning round beginning with some of the most current events that people are talking about. Hunter Biden, the pardon from his dad, the president of the United States. Your reaction to that?
I mean, it's consistent with how Joe Biden has handled himself in public office. It would be different if he even tried to pardon some of the individuals that he locked up from the '94 crime bill. But those people's sons are just as important as the president's son because they got some of them individuals got, extremely long sentences that maybe they shouldn't have had to serve such a long sentence for a nonviolent crime. And so these are the type of things that the American people are tired of, where elite individuals are able to kind of get access to justice, but individuals from the working class society have to wait on justice. And I think President Trump is going to change that as he tries to reform our justice system in a way that's fair, as well as reform our intelligence community in a way that kind of respects people's individual rights.
So that means that he's bringing in people like Pam Bondi, as well as naming Kash Patel to be his possible FBI director. What does that do in terms of his ability to get a Senate to confirm both of them?
I think that if the Senate is smart, they'll work with President Trump and help him kind of create this new infrastructure of opportunity throughout America by giving him the people that he know can actually get the job done. If we want to kind of change the way Washington's work, we're going to have to not do business as usual and bring in some new blood that can actually get things done.
Ron, thank you for being on America's Hope. And my final question to you is, what is your hope for America?
My hope for America is that we no longer have a tale of two cities. I want that even the most spared communities to be transformed in a way that the next generation will be, a shining beacon of light where we can show the world that we can have diversity and opportunity. But that diversity is also going to help us grow to be that city on the hill that can show the world the possibilities that once people have opportunities, we can kind of leverage our diversity and make us more competitive than any other country in the world.
Ron, I appreciate you. Thank you, my friend.
All right, thanks so much.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to America's Hope. I'm delighted to interview my next guest. He's a friend. He's a former colleague of mine. We worked together at Fox News for a number of years, but I met him when he was campaigning for president of the United States. And even then, there was something about Mike Huckabee that drew me closer to him. And after this interview, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Let me introduce to you Governor Mike Huckabee, the former governor of Arkansas, former campaign, presidential campaign, host of the Huckabee Show on TBN. And welcome to the program. And let me let the cat out the bag for people who may not know. You've been nominated to become an ambassador to Israel, and I can't think of a better person than you, Mike. You should be the one, or governor.
Kelly, I want to tell you what a thrill it is just to be with you. You and I had a special bond when we were both working at Fox. We were two of I guess it's fair to say, the authentic believers who actually were devoted to the Lord, and it was an extraordinary opportunity to work with you. It's where we not only got close because of just running together in the hallways, but you sang on my Fox News show. I thought, my goodness, this guy, he's wasting his talent doing television. He ought to be on the stage in Vegas. And I still feel that way, but just such a warmth in my heart for you and the wonderful relationship that I cherish and will forever. The ambassador thing, I got to get Senate confirmed, of course, but what a blessing. It's one of the, not one of the, it is the only thing that Donald Trump could have asked me to do that I was willing to sort of join with Isaiah and say, "Here am I, Lord, send me." I didn't care about babysitting a bureaucracy or oiling the machinery of some bloated government agency. But when he asked me, would I go to Israel and be ambassador, I knew it was a calling. I knew it was a God thing, and I've not doubted it since that moment. And I'm very much looking forward to it with a little fear and trepidation of what's ahead of me. But I know the path is the one the Lord would have me do.
And I understand the fear and trepidation because of all that surrounding uh, our strongest ally in the Middle East and potentially our strongest ally ever. That's
Yeah.
the state of Israel. And this is a place that you've been visiting, as I understand it through your stories, since you were a teenager. And as a result of that, you have built up quite a following there, but also some deep friendships there.
Well, I have, Kelly. My first trip was in July of 1973. I was a month away from my 18th birthday. So I was only 17 at the time I first went. Fell in love with Israel. And Israel in 1973 is a very different country than it is today. Today, it is a modern, just bastion of innovation, creativity, and economic power. Back then, it was a sleepy little country struggling to just stay alive and trying to survive what was one after another onslaughts from its neighboring nations who wanted to destroy it. So I've watched Israel over these past 50, almost 52 years, and I've said I've literally seen the prophecy come to light. The dry bones have come to live, and the desert has bloomed before my
Mm.
eyes. Literally, I've seen it over these years. And what a joy to be able to go back in this capacity. It's sort of like maybe the next could be the last chapter of my life in terms of some professional endeavor. I don't know. I don't ever plan to retire, but clearly there comes a point at which, you say, is this God's chapter for which he has been preparing me? I'm ready, and I'm beyond thrilled about what could happen with our ally. And I'm so glad the way you framed it, because that's true. Israel is not just an ally, it may be our most important and strategic one. I know that we always talk about the special relationship we have with the UK, but I remind people we broke away from them.
Mm.
We do have
Yeah.
a special relationship, and our roots are there. But Israel has almost a mirror image of the United States in that both our country and Israel were formed by people who escaped the galloping terror, wanted religious freedom, wanted a democracy where they chose their own government, could criticize their government officials, could pave their own way, but could raise their families with a real sense of security. That's why America was created. It's why Israel came to be as a modern nation, fulfilling a 3,500-year promise that God gave to Abraham. So it is just an exciting time to be an American and then to be able to represent America in a country that so much mirrors our own.
You bring that up and you talked about Ezekiel, and some people may not understand your biblical knowledge because they don't pick up the Bible and read it. And you have served as a pastor for many years as well. And it's not just serving as a pastor, it's who you are. It's as I know you, you're a man of faith. And Ezekiel, the valley of dry bones. I'd like
Um,
you to unpack that a little bit for viewers who are watching this, who may not have a clue what the valley of dry bones is and how God spoke to a prophet who said, "Breathe life into these bones."
there was a time in Israel's ancient history, and it looked like the nation was finished. It was desolate. It had been put into captivity. And Ezekiel the prophet was given a vision that the dry bones, that which looked to be dead without life, uh, God would breathe to it, and those dry bones would be formed with flesh and with muscle, and they would live again. And it was a reminder that there may be a time in history where it looked like that God was finished with Israel, that it was done. There was nothing left. And it was just a sort of a piece in the dustbin of history. But just as it was in the days of Ezekiel, so it is in modern times where God took the dry bones and he breathed life and he put flesh and muscle. And now this tiny little nation, the size of New Jersey, has more Nobel Science Prize winners than any other nation on the planet. Their innovations, which most Americans don't even understand, change our lives here in the United States. If a person has a cell phone, they can thank Israel for that, because the SIM card that is essential to the operation of a cell phone developed there. Heart stent procedures that have saved many a life, perhaps family members of some of the folks watching us, developed by Hadassah Medical Center in Israel. And on the medical really innovations take place, particularly in the world of high tech. The Israelis have developed so many things that we take for granted. Folks don't know they are an Israeli product that we are able to enjoy.
Absolutely, Governor. We do take it for granted because we don't know. And the reason why I was asking that question, because it goes to October 7th.
Hmm.
And after October 7th, we saw a heinous, dastardly deed inflicted upon the innocent people of the kibbutzim and the cities along the Gaza border. Subsequent to that, I went there and I talked to some of those members who lived there, the survivors. There are hostages still missing, 101 still in captivity, believed to be in Gaza. Others may have passed. And out of all of this sadness and heartbreak, we saw Israel stand up to be resilient and even returning to the Torah, which is their faith,
Hmm.
and studying God's word once again. Their hearts have been broken, yet they've turned to God. Where I'm going with this question, though, is we saw a rise in anti-Semitism. We saw a rise in people hating Israel and protesting on the streets of America and on our college campuses, chanting "Death to Israel, death to America." Um, that's why I wanted you to unpack Ezekiel, because Israel didn't begin in 1948.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's really started 3,500 years ago when God told Abraham that he would make from him a great nation. And this great nation would impact the rest of the world. It must have seemed farcical for Abraham to hear this message back then. I mean, a tribal, nomadic group of people, and what did they have impact on the world? Um, but through the centuries, God has kept his promise even when we didn't keep ours. And that's part of the wonderful blessing of God, is that uh, God's commitment to what he promises is not contingent upon what we promise. We break our promises all the time. God never does. So for 3,500 years, God has had his hand on this land and on the people. Um, what we're seeing now is nothing short of a restoration, not only of the physical property, but a restoration of the Jewish people. I've tried to understand the anti-Semitism that you mentioned, Kelly, and it's hard to get your arms around. Why would people have such irrational hate for the Jews, irrational hate for Israel? It makes no sense. It's not like the Jewish people did anything specifically offensively to the people who are protesting on American college campuses. But it really does come down to this. The reason that people hate the Jews and hate Israel is because deep down, they may not even understand it. They hate God. This is not a
Mm.
political issue. It's not a financial, it is not a socio-economic issue. It is a spiritual issue. When people hate God, they hate those who represent God. And there's no way that you can describe the Jewish people without connecting them to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, without understanding that they are built on the foundation of God's law, that they are chosen by God to live in this land and to be a witness to the nations. And so when I look at this just irrational animosity toward Jewish people, and you see it manifest particularly on October the 7th with the massacre of 1,200 innocent civilian Jews, you have to step back and ask why. And the only thing that gives any explanation to is that this is not against just Jewish people. This is against the God of the Jewish people.
And now your daughter is at the helm as the governor of Arkansas. She served with President-elect Trump in his previous administration as his White House press secretary. And and so in the Huckabee tradition of fusing faith and politics, how do you do that so well? I, I mean, I, how do you do that so well, bringing faith and politics and even business into the marketplace?
For me, it's not complicated. It's that you put faith first. It's the foundation upon which everything else is built. I had someone say to me many years ago when I was first getting into politics, I bet it's really, really hard to be a Christian in politics. And I said, no, actually, for me, it is much easier to be a believer. And I'll tell you why. A lot of people in politics wake up every day, they read an opinion poll, they read the front page of the paper, and they try to figure out what it is they need to believe and say today. If your faith is real, if it's authentic, your compass points north. So I never had to wake up every day and decide, what am I going to believe today? What am I going to say today? Um, so for me, it was not a matter of it being more difficult. It was a matter of it being much easier. I know who I am, comfortable in my skin, not right all the time, not in any way pretending that, but I don't wake up every day trying to decide which value system, which set of convictions I'm going to take with me to work. Those are fixed. And if they get me in trouble, so be it. If they get me unelected, so be it. Um, I just recognize that I stand fast on those principles that have guided me, shaped me, that I trust. And the consequences are, frankly, the least of my concern. That's given me a level of freedom and reckless abandon to what I believe that I think would be impossible if I tried to live without that.
We're coming back with more of America's Hope after this.
So I've got to ask you, you mentioned you know who you are, but for the people watching this, who is Mike Huckabee? How did you come to be the man that you are today?
I grew up in I guess you could say a state of virtual poverty. I mean, my parents worked hard, but we never had anything. I lived in a little orange brick shotgun house on 2nd Street in Hope, Arkansas. And, growing up in that little rent house, I became the first male in my entire family lineage to even graduate high school. No male upstream from me had ever finished high school. My father, grandfather, great grandfather, no male ever. So I hear people saying I'm the first in my family to go to college. Well, good for you. I was the first in my family as a male to ever get out of high school.
Wow.
Expectations for me were not exactly high because people figured, well, he'll just be a working class stiff like everyone else in his family has ever been. God bless me. He gave me the desire to get a good education. Maybe because I had to do some things when I was a kid to earn enough money to buy baseballs and BBs from a BB gun, like catching chickens. That was such a horrible thing that I would come out of those chicken houses after working all night in them and say, what do I got to do so I don't have to do this for the rest of my life? And I'd always hear the same thing. Get a good education, treat people right, and work hard. I'm thinking, I'll tell you what I'm going to do in life. I'm going to do these 3 things because I don't want to work in a chicken house forever. It motivated me. And then just the Lord's blessing, I got through college. Um, I look at my life. I'm not sure what I've lived would be possible almost anywhere else on earth. It's why I love America. America is, for me, not just the country where I was born and lived, but it is a land that has given me hope, opportunity, and incentive. Nowhere else on the planet do you get to really move beyond where you start. But in America, you don't have to stop where you start. You can move beyond it if you're willing to take risks, work hard. And sometimes you may have to work harder than people around you who had some maybe some advantages, whether they were financial or family advantages, but it doesn't mean that you don't have the capacity to move forward. And God has been beyond good to me.
President-elect Donald Trump. What do you foresee for what lies ahead for America for such a time as this?
I think, Kelly, the most important way we bring America to a new chapter is that we see the successes that touch every strata of our society. When people get better paychecks, when people feel comfortable about the neighborhoods in which they live and their kids are safe, when people have a sense of security about their long-term future, they can see their kids going to college or going to trade school and being independent on their own. Because every parent's job is not just to create the next generation, but frankly, the big job is to train our replacements. And when we can see some future in that, there is really, I think, a sense in which a lot of the divisions begin to erase, and we quit worrying about what isn't working and we celebrate what is working. That's what I hope will start happening. I do think, Donald Trump is certainly not a perfect person. Nobody pretends he is. He doesn't pretend he is. His strength is in I guess he comes at this totally different than any person in politics I've ever known. Most people tend to be pretty much an ideologue in politics, very strong beliefs and convictions about political issues, what the tax rate should be, what foreign policy ought to look like. Donald Trump is not an ideologue. He's a pragmatist. His two questions that he brings to the table every day are these. One, will it work? And number two, will it make things better or worse? Those are his two questions. So it may be people say, well, that's not a really Republican idea that he just put on the table. He doesn't care. Does it work? Does it make life better? That's the criteria. It's not, would this be approved by the Republican National Committee? Donald Trump could care less whether it is. He's a pragmatist. He wants to know, will it work and will it make things better? And if people can back off and understand that, it'll give both Republicans and Democrats something to breathe easier about. Well, except for the people who are such ideological Republicans that they want a purity of party more than they want the success of country. And those people, I don't have much patience for anyway.
Wow, that's really good. It's simple yet profound. You got to be for the country, and that means taking on new ideas that shake up our ideology. Uh, so let me do a lightning round real quick. I'm
Okay.
being cognizant of your time, and I thank you for the time that you've given me so far. Let's look out here. The rule of law. Many people are questioning the rule of law in light of the president of the United States pardoning his son Hunter Biden. He, of course, the history that he said he would never do this. What does it look like from your vantage point, having served in government and respecting the rule of law? What does this really do? Because there's criticism from both sides of the aisle.
I think the problem that Joe Biden created for himself is that he was dishonest about, first of all, saying he would never pardon his son, and then he did it. His credibility is shot. Secondly, it's that he tried to give an excuse for doing it and saying, well, the justice system is weaponized. I'm thinking, it was your Justice Department, Joe, that carried this out. It wasn't Donald Trump's. You can't blame anybody but Merrick Garland and the DOJ that you created. And this went to trial in Delaware, for heaven's sakes, the friendliest place for a Biden to be. So I think he should have just owned up and said, look, I'm pardoning him because he's my son. I love my son. I have the power to do it, and I'm going to do it. All of you just deal with it. Because that's frankly easier for people to accept than it is for you. Think about how many tens of thousands of mothers and fathers across America who have sons and daughters in prison for doing at least or less than what Hunter Biden did. And they're wondering, how come my kid is doing 7 to 10 or 12 years and Hunter gets paid 6, 7 figures for some artwork he did and gets off scot-free? That's a problem. And I just believe that if Joe Biden was going to do the pardon, he should have been honest about it up front. And then he shouldn't try to hide behind some fictitious, gee, I'm doing it because people are against him because he's a Biden. No, he almost got off because he was a Biden, only because a judge in D.C. threw it out, the original plea deal, which would have let him off the hook, and said, well, there's no precedent for this. Nobody has gotten this deal before. And that's why they had to go to trial in the first place.
What do you think the president will face with his cabinet choices? I mean, Senate has the right to advise and consent. There will be Senate confirmation hearings, including on you, but there
Yeah.
are others as well. And people are talking about Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, Pete Hegseth, all of these particular people coming into the scope, if you will, of the media, but also with people on both sides who are kind of scratching their heads. But like you said, this is a president who will do something totally different because he is a disruptor.
That's the key. The common denominator of almost all of these cabinet picks are that these people represent disruption to the status quo. That's why Donald Trump got elected. There are people of all colors, of all genders, of all nationalities, ethnicities, who are sick of Washington operating as a monolithic uniparty that protects itself and its own institutions, its insular environment of DC, and basically runs over all other kind of people. What I believe Donald Trump represents is to say, we're going to disrupt, and to use a term, we're going to blow this place up and turn it back into a place that serves the people rather than expects the people to serve it. To that degree, I think every one of his picks are brilliant. And he definitely has picked some that are going to be disruptive. And I say hallelujah. He's picked out some very smart people, but they're genuinely committed to the idea that we put America first, and it is service above self. That I think is incredibly very powerful. And when I hear people say, "Will the Senate approve them?" I hope they will. Now, I hope they'll ask the questions. They have every not only right, frankly, the Senate has a responsibility to ask hard questions and to make sure to properly vet every appointment, including me. But at the end of the day, they need to ask themselves, is this person simply unfit? And if so, why? And if not, then to quote a line from that great sports movie, Hoosiers, where the coach, played by Gene Hackman, pointed to four guys on the court and said, that's my team right there. That's my team. They're on the court. I think Donald Trump has a right to say to the Senate, that's my team. That's who I'm going to play with right here. And that's really what he's doing by picking the team that he picked.
Governor, I'm going to ask you before we go. You play a mean bass guitar, and I've had the pleasure of being in your company as we've performed so many songs together in the past, and I look forward to even doing that in the future.
The Speaker of the Knesset, which is like their version of Congress, has already contacted me. I'd known him before. What I didn't know is that he is an incredible guitar player. So we've already made plans that when I get there, we're going to get together and make some music. We may end up starting a movement called Peace Through Music. So we may need a vocalist. I hope you'll come over and join us.
Peace for Music, I'll join you on that one. Final question is, what is your hope for Israel and for America?
I think it is that in Israel that there will be a level of security that they currently do not have. There cannot be these incursions from other terrorist groups or nations that threaten them every single day. There has to be a resolve to this, and building relationships with other nations that are led by Muslim leaders. There's no reason that can't continue. We saw it in the Abraham Accords. It was so powerful. Donald Trump should have gotten a Nobel Prize for that. But to expand that to Saudi Arabia, to Egypt, and to other countries, and to build upon the Abraham Accords and to say, we can live together in this neighborhood. We don't have to be threatening to each other. We're not threatening to each other. That's going to be something that will be very positive.
Yeah. And to America?
I think for America, it's to get back to sanity. Get back to the place where we have free speech, freedom of religion, where if you want to believe something, believe it. If you want not to believe anything, you're free to do that too. Get back to an economic system that treats everybody the same. Get to a justice system that treats everybody the same, where Lady Justice is truly colorblind and blind to anything other than the law, and to return to a sense of sanity where men are men, women are women. We know the difference and we celebrate the difference, but we don't blur those lines and act like that one can be another just because somebody declares it so. Those are things that I call common sense. We get back to that, I think we have a great future.
Governor Mike Huckabee, soon to be, and I pray so, Ambassador Mike Huckabee. I really appreciate you, man. Thank you so much. You know how much I care about you and your family. My best to each and every one of you. And of course, I'm going to close the show with your permission with one of those songs we did on your show, Huckabee, called
Wonderful.
Love, Freedom, and Peace, because that's exactly what you are promoting. Love, freedom, and peace. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Kelly.
Welcome back to America's Hope. I'd like to thank our guests who appeared on tonight's program. And as I said, we'll leave you with a little bit of this song that Mike Huckabee and I did together on his show, The Huckabee Show. And it's called Love, Freedom, and Peace. Keep spreading it around, everybody, and let hope thrive and survive. God bless.
The Lord, raise your hands, yeah. If anybody here needs me, raise your hands. Don't let the color of my skin come between me and you, my friend.